Hi,
Good morning.
Thanks for joining me. I wonder what you make of what President Trump said last night. This is no case to answer. It's all a travesty of justice. Everything's terrible, and he shouldn't have been arrested or had to pay this bond of $200,000. What do you make of this situation?
I thought his tone in those comments was very different than we're used to seeing from Donald Trump. It was much less combative. I don't want to say philosophical. It's probably not a word we use to describe Donald Trump, but he seemed much more thoughtful, less combative, almost resigned to the fact that he is going to have to deal with these legal processes. Yes, he is saying, "I didn't do it," but he wasn't sort of foaming at the mouth in the way that we often see with him. I think one thing that the media, at least, is focusing on with this one is the mugshot. Now, yesterday when I was watching, flipping through various bits of U.S. coverage, this was all that the U.S. commentators could talk about. Would there be a mugshot? And a mugshot is just that photograph that is taken when a defendant turns him or herself in. Every state, every jurisdiction has a slightly different way of handling these things in these previous arrests. And we're now on to number 4. There was not a mugshot taken. The argument was, yes, we want to treat Donald Trump like everybody else, but we know what he looks like. He doesn't need a mugshot. So in Fulton County, early this morning was the first time that this has happened. And of course, Donald Trump has used this for campaign purposes. He has posted it on Twitter, or X, as Twitter was formerly known.
Well, it just shows, doesn't it, Laurie, that any image whatsoever, especially of him, as he would put it, being persecuted by his political enemies, is something that can be used for electoral purposes.
Absolutely, which is handy for him because a lot of the money that he is collecting is going straight into legal fees. So if he can get this free publicity, it is helpful for his campaign. And as we saw, there was a debate amongst other Republican Party candidates for the presidential election earlier this week. He didn't feel he needed to turn up. He doesn't need that kind of publicity. So yes, this was posted on Twitter, and his first time back onto Twitter, or X, since he was banned from the site.
A big boost for Elon Musk's platform, by the look of things.
Absolutely, and certainly Elon Musk's platform can certainly use a little bit of help. Although even when it wasn't owned by Elon Musk, and Donald Trump was using Twitter to such an effect and such a positive effect to rally his supporters, remember, Twitter still was not profitable.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of Trump and Biden, I mean, how will Democrats be reacting to this? Will they just be kind of rolling their eyes and saying this is what he always does, or will there be a more subtle, nuanced kind of approach?
No, I think this is a really good question, because as journalists, we are covering this. We have to cover this, even though this is the 4th arrest and we're slightly inured to Donald Trump being indicted. We're still covering it. Democrats in Washington are incensed. Outside of it, and there's a term inside the Beltway, which is like the Westminster bubble, where if you're politically engaged, you really do follow this. But Democrats who I think are politically engaged, who I speak to from time to time, are just exhausted. The feeling is, I hope he's in, and again, this is just Democrats, I hope he's indicted on something, but it's getting too difficult to follow all of this. It's difficult to pick apart
but also
what might...
But is that, sorry to interrupt you, Laurie, but is that perhaps part of what actually plays into Donald Trump's hands here, in that it is far too complicated for most people to handle 4 indictments, never mind 91 separate charges. But the general feeling they have, because people respond to politics emotionally, is that either he's being persecuted or justice is being done. And it doesn't really matter what the detail is.
I mean, you're making a good point, but I think there's something in between justice being done and he's being persecuted. And in between there is utter exhaustion. And I think this is a real risk for Democratic voters, because they're exhausted by this. They aren't going to vote for Donald Trump regardless. But with Joe Biden not polling all that well at the moment, I think there is a real risk that some Democrats become disengaged from the entire political process and may not turn up at the polling booth come November. So I think this is a real risk with Democrats, even those Democrats who believe that Donald Trump does have a case to answer and should ultimately be sitting behind bars.
Final question, Laurie. Do you think Biden will be the candidate for the Democrats?
Yes, I do. I don't think there's any question about that. But I do also think that it's worth a discussion, and maybe you and I can do this another time, as to why Biden's candidate, why there has the succession planning in the Democratic Party has been so poor. This is the incredible missing cabinet. Yeah. Can you picture anybody other than Antony Blinken, the Secretary of State? Can you even picture anyone? You almost forget what Kamala Harris looks like because we never see her.
That's right. That's right. Well, that's a really interesting discussion. I'd love to have that discussion with you on another programme, actually, Laurie. So I'll talk to the producers about getting you on. Thank you very much indeed, Laurie Laird there, who's a US political commentator. Thank you.